Good evening. I'm Byron Giles, founder of CertificationPoint. Welcome to 5 Minutes with the Founder. In today's mini-series, I'd like to talk about competition and gaining a competitive edge. And I'll be initially starting off by reading an excerpt from my book, Unleashing Your Harness Potential, and Chapter 17, Gaining a Competitive Edge. Gaining a competitive advantage takes strategic planning and extensive research. You must create an edge over your competitors to have a competitive advantage. Gaining an advantage over your competition is less about doing something others will not and more about adding distinct quality and uniqueness to your processes. Now, 8 ways to assist you in gaining that competitive edge. Analyze your target market and identify your competition. Learn from your competition and your customers. Know your strengths. Practice your craft. Work hard and smart. Be mentally focused. Stay on the cutting edge. And cost focus. These are all competitive advantages that are competitive edge niches that I feel will assist CertificationPoint, but not so much assist CertificationPoint, but also assist the user base within CertificationPoint. That's stuff. These are items that they can actually use to hone in on their skills and become better people and progress in their skill set and the experience they gain from entrance into college on into graduation and further into life. Analyze them, going into briefly into each of the areas, analyzing your target market and identify your competition. You can't really gain any type of edge if you don't know who your competition is. I can remember early on getting cut twice in high school and going, and I just remember that feeling. And looking back on it, I didn't assess my competition all that well. I went in with it more of an open mind of not wanting to get cut versus identifying what my strengths were and how my strengths would assist me in getting a competitive edge in every category, how my versatility would assist me in every category. Learn from your competition. You gotta, watching your competition, you learn idiosyncrasies, you learn, especially in the eMarketplace, you start to understand why they do certain processes and whether that process is something that is mainstream that customers are used to versus whether they are or they aren't, and whether those processes is something that you may need to take on to ease customers' minds into using your processes. Knowing your strengths, pretty self-explanatory. Practice your craft, very important. You always want to continue getting better. I can remember after getting cut in high school twice and going into college and walking on at the college that I went to. I had practiced over the summer and worked hard, lifted weights and whatnot, but my focus was still, after getting cut twice, you kind of back up and start baby steps again. So my main focus was making the team. That transference of mental makeup didn't adjust the way it probably should after making the team, but needless to say, I did complete part of my task, so to speak. Being mentally focused is very important. When I talk about competition in the last few seconds of the call of this session, I'll talk about the different types of competition that takes place in these eMarketplaces in the trenches. Staying on the cutting edge, you always want to know what's new, how what's new can assist your customer, not so much always bringing that what's new into your arena, but understanding when, where, and if that can make things better for you. And cost focused, always understand the cost associated with your startup, and the cost, not so much the cost metrics, but the cost of not only bringing the clients in, but the expenses for the customer. Will that customer pay that make that purchase, and are you setting your prices right? And going into extending this call, I keep saying call, but extending this session probably about a minute longer. I'd like to talk about some of the different types of competition that you see in the trenches within, not just eMarketplace startups, but startups with the whole plethora of startups. The competition in eMarketplace it can be nasty on one hand, but it can also be one of those. It can be healthy. I can tell you without a doubt, I've received some emails that were pretty interesting. I'll say to say the least. I've gotten emails saying your site sucks, you need to quit, and ending it with go to hell and this sucks, nigger. They actually use that word in email. I keep all those for if the person that sent me those emails is listening to any of my calls. Yes, I keep them, and I'm keeping them as motivation. And it actually drives me. Part of it makes me realize, hey, I must be on to something. I see there's a competition with respect to gaining a competitive advantage in the search engines. You see where certain businesses want to reach that top spot, and they'll knock you off by resubmitting your site in a manner that decreases your relevance in the search engines. But for the most part, you get the emails. You get sometimes you could be talking to an individual, and they may see your idea as really awesome, but they may tell you or express sentiment that it's never going to work. If you feel like God has given you that idea, then you also have to believe that He's giving you the mental makeup and the vision to carry it forward and create something that can really make a difference in people's lives. Competition is a tricky. It's somewhat tricky because there's different areas and different ways of competing, especially within the technology space. I feel education and technology is becoming more prevalent. I believe it's becoming a major player. We just saw recently, within the past couple of weeks, an educational technology startup get funded for $40 million. That is probably the highest to date that I've heard, but I don't think it's the end. I believe there's a shift is occurring with respect to technology, social networks. I believe it's going, a certain section is splitting off into the educational arena. We're realizing that as a whole, as a nation, as a world, country, whatever you want to call, what have you, that the cost of education is too high to get to a point where you graduated and you're not able to get a job, but you have 100, 200, 300,000 and on up in debt. There's got to be changes. There's something has got to be done about that, and you can't put all the onus on the college. The college is a learning environment. Like I said once before, the college is not a learning environment. It's a learning environment, but it's not the proving ground. There's got to be associative resources that colleges can pinpoint and collaborate with to push the students forward into where they need to be once they get out of college. Thank you.